Mangalam sadhu veshaya shishya chitta vilasine vidita khila vidyaya moksha vigna vighatine Saumya Kashi nivasaya deshikaya viragine Chaitanyananda rupaya jivan muktaya mangalam Om Shanti 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 Om Apyayantu Mamangani Vak Pranashchakshushrotramato Balamindriyani Cha Sarvani Sarvam Brahma Upanishadam Maham Brahma Nirakuryam Mama Brahma Nirakarot Anirakaranamastu Anirakaranam me astu Tadatmani nirate ya Upanishadsu dharmaste te mai santu Om Shanti 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 Shri Sadguru Maharaj Ki Jai. Good morning. Awake. Yesterday we have seen the second mantra of the Upanishad. Shrotrasya Shrotram Manaso Manoyat Vachoha Vacham Kau Pranasya Pranaha. The question of the student was regarding the director of the eyes and the mind and the prana, and the answer was very strange. Since he is the ear of the ear, the eye of the eye, the mind of the mind, the speech of speech, the life of life, therefore the intelligent man, after giving up self-identification with the senses and renouncing this world, become immortal. That was the answer. And we had a couple of questions regarding it. The first problem was that this answer is not really answering the question. The question was about someone who is the director of the mind, etc. And the answer is completely different. Since he is the eye of the eye, etc., we were expecting to hear something like, Mr. So-and-so is the director of the eye and the mind. And we explained that this is not a difficulty because there is no other way to answer about it. Then came another question. Why the mind needs another mind in order to think? Why the eye needs another eye in order to see? This is the eye itself is seeing. He doesn't need another eye to see. So what is the meaning? Since he is the eye of the eye, the mind of the mind, the speech of speech, what is the meaning of it? And we explained that the eye of the eye means that the eye in itself doesn't have the ability, the capacity to know, because the mind is inert. The mind is an object. In itself is not endowed with consciousness. Consciousness is not the quality of the eye. It is not even a quality of the mind. Even the mind itself is not conscious. Thoughts, just like everything else in this world, is an object. A thought is an object. It has dimensions. It has volition. It has a shape, a color, and therefore it is an object. And as such, it is not endowed with consciousness. And therefore, we expect something different and distinct from the mind, something separate and distinct from the eye, to be as their substratum, and that should be consciousness. Now Shankara says, It is commonly accepted belief that the ears, etc., constitute the self of all, and that they are conscious. This is being refuted here. There does exist something which is known to the intellect of the man of realization, which dwells in the innermost recesses of all, which is changeless, undecaying, immortal, fearless, and unborn, and which is the ear, etc., of even the ear, etc., i.e., the source of their capacity to act. Thus, the answer and significance of the word can certainly be justified. Shankara is explaining here that normal understanding is that this conglomeration of body and mind and senses in itself is enough to explain consciousness. We don't need to bring anything from outside. This is functioning by itself. But till today, science was not able to demonstrate how consciousness is being produced in the brain. It is called the hard problem of consciousness. Nobody ever was able to demonstrate how chemical and electrical reaction in the brain can produce consciousness. And the Advaita Vedanta philosophy is saying it will never happen because consciousness is not the product of the brain. Consciousness is not produced by anything. On the other hand, consciousness is the substratum. Consciousness is the underlying reality, and within consciousness, everything takes place. You remember we talked about the glass? We say the glass in relation to space. It is not space that is within the glass. It is glass which is within the space. It is not the brain which creates consciousness. It is consciousness which is the ground, the basis of the brain and everything else. Consciousness is, and within consciousness everything manifests. Now the verse says, therefore the intelligent man, after giving up the identification with the senses and renouncing this world, become immortal. The teacher is telling the student that a person who recognizes and understands the truth regarding consciousness as the underlying reality of the senses and the mind, etc., after undergoing the process of purification and getting self-mastery, getting control over the mind, and giving up the attachment and the desire for sensual enjoyments, and renouncing the world, such a person becomes immortal. What is the meaning of becoming immortal? Anyone here met anybody immortal ever? The body is subject to death. This is a fact. People die. Everybody dies. Becoming immortal means realizing and recognizing that we are immortal. Consciousness, as we have explained, is not the product of anything. It is not a composite thing. It is not made up but by different things. It is not the product of any cause. Products are always, invariably, going to be destroyed. composite things, things which are composed of different components, different parts, invariably going to break down back into the parts sooner or later. Everything, everywhere. But consciousness is not a composite thing. Consciousness is not the product of anything. Consciousness is not coming into being, and it is not going out of existence. And consciousness doesn't depend on the body. Whether the body is there or not, consciousness is. Whether the mind functions or not, consciousness is, according to this philosophy. And therefore, recognizing and realizing that you are that consciousness which is not affected by the changes of the body and the mind is the same as becoming immortal. There is an important point in spiritual quest that many spiritual aspirants miss. There are such expressions as self-realization, knowledge of the self, etc., that imply that we have to gain a knowledge of the self, that we have to receive somehow realization. It implies that now I am empty of realization, I'm missing self-knowledge, and I need to acquire it. When they open the boutique, I can go and purchase it, right? The problem is that something that is going to be acquired, sooner or later is also going to be lost. This is the law, we know it. Things that you are going to get, you are also going eventually to lose. There is a little story, analogy, about a person coming back to his town after many, many years. He used to have this very good friend of him who was very rich and had a big, beautiful house, and he is going to visit him. But in the place where that house used to stand, he sees a dilapidated ruins. He just sees some old house, everything collapses. And there in the middle of that place, on a heap of rubble, he sees a man, a young man sitting, wear rags, emaciated, unshaved, look like a beggar. And he asked him, "Hey, do you know Mr. So-and-so who used to live here some many years ago?" He says, "Yeah, I know that person. That was my father." He said, "Your father? Really? This was your father? But your father was so rich?" He says, "No, my father was no rich. It was all an illusion." I say, no, I know. Your father was a very wealthy person. He had a big treasure." He says, "There was no treasure. Once my father had a heart attack and he died. After he died, I did some bad moves and I lost everything I had, and here I am." But that person says, "No, your father had a big treasure, I know. Actually, he hid it right under where you are sitting now, under the tiles. There is a big chest full of diamonds and money and whatever." He says, "I don't know about anything like this." So, okay, check, dig out. He started to remove the rubble, to start digging. And after he removed the tiles, he finds this big box. And when he opens it, he cannot believe it. It is full of diamonds and gems and money and whatever. Now, at this moment, from the poorest guy in the whole town, he turns into the richest person in town, right? Or whether he was rich all along. What do you think? Before he realizes, before he found this chest full of money, was he poor or was he rich? Well, he didn't know where he's going to get his next meal, right? He was very poor. But at the same time, to whom this money belonged? It was all his. So he was the richest person. At the same time, he was the richest person in town and the poorest person in town. What made him poor? His ignorance. He was not poor, but ignorance made him poor. Now, this story is all about us, right? We are the richest people in consciousness, which means consciousness is our true nature. This is who we are right here and right now. You don't need to acquire consciousness. You don't need to acquire the self. Can you acquire the self? You are the self. There is no any question of acquisition. At the same time, there is ignorance. We are ignorant about our true nature, and therefore we experience ourselves as limited and miserable. This is exactly the meaning of ignorance. When ignorance is there, there is suffering. Suffering is foreign to our nature. Suffering is not the nature of consciousness. Suffering is not who we are in reality, but there is ignorance. Even though we are pure consciousness, even though we are of the nature of bliss, because of this ignorance, we suffer. So what do we need to do? Do we need to go and acquire consciousness? Did that poor man needs to go and work hard and earn money? No, all he needed to do is recognize and realize his true wealth, to realize and recognize that right under where he is sitting, there is a box full of money and gold. That's all it took. Just realizing and recognizing that he is already the richest person. In the same manner, the spiritual path is not a path in the sense of going from here to there. A path implies the notion of going from one place to another. It implies that I am here, but I want to be over there. When this is the situation, I am here, but I want to be over there, there is a conflict. There is a conflict between what is and what should be. This conflict is the illusion. This conflict is wrong. We don't need to acquire anything. We need to give up our ignorance, our false notions. Now, we come to the third mantra. And yesterday I told you already that the teacher is very uncomfortable with his own answer. He realizes that what he said to the student was not exactly directly answering the question. So he feels the need to explain himself. And therefore he says the following, and please chant after me. Natatra chakshur gacchati navak gacchati no manaha na vidmo na vijanimo Yathaitad Anushishyat Natatra Chakshur Gacchati Navak Gacchati no Manaha Navidmo Navijanimo Yatha Etad Anushishyat. He says, Tatra, there, na gacchati is not going. What? Chakshuhu. Chakshu means the eye. The eye doesn't go there. Na vak, no speech. Speech also doesn't go there. Na vak gacchati. Speech is not going. Gacchati means to go. No manaha. No, the mind is going there. What is there? Where the mind doesn't go, where the eyes doesn't go. In the Upanishads, the word there refers to the Brahman, refers to pure consciousness, to ultimate reality. And the word idam, atra, and other words that it have the meaning of here, they refer to this manifested world. For example, in the word Purnamada, Purnamidam, Purnat, that you all chant and know. So Purnam, Idam. Idam means this. And Purnam, Adaha. Adaha means that, there. It's like Tatra. So Adaha means the Nirguna Brahman, the highest Brahman. And Idam means the manifested Brahman, which is the world. Right? So in the Upanishads, wherever we see expressions of here and there, it refers to the manifested world versus Brahman, pure consciousness. And the teacher is telling the student, not tatra chakshur gacchati. The eyes, the senses, cannot go to pure consciousness. What is the meaning they cannot go? They cannot comprehend it. They cannot grasp it. You cannot experience pure consciousness through the senses. And vak, speech, represents all the karmendriyas, represents all the organs of actions, which basically means that through action, through deeds, you cannot comprehend, you cannot grasp pure consciousness. Nothing that you are going to do is going to bring you the realization of Brahman. I repeat, nothing that you are going to do is going to bring you the realization of Brahman. May it be meditation, pranayama, puja, karma yoga, you name it. Actions don't have the capacity to bring you realization. Why? Because actions are bringing you from here over there. But you don't need to go over there. Right? In the little story we just told, actions means go to work and earn some money. No, you don't need to go and earn money. You need to realize that you are right here, right now, the richest person in town. Or in other words, realization of consciousness, of pure consciousness of our true nature, is not the result of any action. Moreover, action by its very nature is based on the dualistic understanding of I am the body and the mind. Because who is acting? The body is doing actions, the mind is moving, is doing actions, but I am neither the body nor the mind, as we have discussed yesterday. I am not the body and I am not the mind. So who is doing actions? As long as I think I am the body and the mind, then I am doing actions. This is ignorance. Can ignorance destroy ignorance? Can ignorance of thinking I am the body and the mind that produces action destroy ignorance? It's like trying to distinguish fire with a burner. It doesn't work. You need to bring something which is contrary, something which militates ignorance. There is only one thing that militates ignorance, and this is knowledge. So the teacher is telling the student, the senses cannot go there, the senses cannot comprehend Brahman, and also the karmendriyas, the organs of actions, cannot bring this realization of truth. And the mind also, navak gachati no manaha, the mind also is not able to comprehend. And this is the most frustrating one, because we are constantly trying to realize the truth through thinking, through the mind. We have the habit of thinking, contemplating, and analyzing everything, and we have this impression that through thinking we will be able to realize and recognize this Brahman. If we just discuss about it enough, we will get it. What are we doing here? We are sitting and discussing about Brahman. So what we are hoping? We are hoping that by the end of this satsang, or maybe a couple of more satsangs, we will get it, and that's it. It's not working like this. No matter how long you are going to discuss about it, the mind doesn't have the capacity to comprehend consciousness. Why? Because the mind can comprehend objects, concepts, ideas. The mind works through definitions. We have mentioned what is a definition. The definition is putting a border. When I define something, I put a border, a boundary to it, and separate it from everything else. That is the meaning of definition. Words are limiting entities. They put borders to the objects they represent. And the mind works through words. And therefore, it doesn't have the capacity to comprehend consciousness which has no boundaries, which has no borders. It is not possible to think over consciousness. We do it all the time, but we are missing the mark. We are missing the target. This is what the teacher is telling the student. Na tatra chakshur gachati, na vak gachati no manaha. You cannot comprehend it with the senses. You cannot do anything about it, and you cannot even think over it. You cannot grasp it through the mind. Therefore, na vidmo na vijanimo yata etad anushishyat. Therefore, he says, na vidmaha. We don't know this thing, which you call consciousness, which you call Brahman, as such and such. The verse doesn't put these words as such and such, but Shankaracharya added. He says this is the meaning here. Knowing something as such and such means having definition, giving it a border, giving it a boundary. You cannot know Brahman as an object, because it is not an object. And therefore, na vijanimo yata etad anushishyat. He is using here the plural sense, and he says we, the teachers, all the Sadgurus, all the real teachers of history face the same problem. He says we don't know how to tell you about it. The teacher is telling the student, listen, as a teacher, I have a problem here. I want to tell you about it, but I don't know how to do it because there's nothing to say. The moment I speak about it, I'm already destroying it. I'm already missing it. And this is the problem and the challenge of the teacher. So, what to do about it? We will see tomorrow. Yeah. So, time is up. We are going to conclude. Some people asked me they wanted some flyers and maybe get in touch the waiting mailing list and all this. So I'm going to leave it here. If anybody didn't have the chance, you can do it after the arati. Okay? So let's sit quiet for just a few seconds. Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti 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 Shri Sadguru Maharaj Ki Jai.